Okay, today's daf we're going to be learning is Ketubot Daf Lamed Hey, and we're going to start at the bottom of Lamed Dalet Amud Bet. Again, a lot of things from today. We're going to go back to things that we learned in the last few pages. I'll try to review as we go along. It's a bit of a complicated daf, I will warn you. Short daf, but kind of complicated. So we're going to start with where we ended yesterday. We had Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish, who both gave different answers. We're not going to go all the way back to Ula, but they all three gave answers to the contradiction, the problem with our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says these people have knas, they pay a penalty, even, right? Someone who rapes them pays a penalty, even though he basically is liable to get lashes, as we see from the Mishnah in Makot. So don't we say lokel mishalem? To which Rabbi Yochanan answered, well, one is in a case where, and this is a big basis for something we're going to talk about today, if he wasn't warned and we can't administer lashes, then he has to pay. If he was warned and gets the lashes, then he doesn't have to pay. Rish Lakish disagrees with that. That we saw at the end of yesterday's daf. Rish Lakish says, what are you talking about? We're going to be more, if we're going to say that someone who got warned it gets exempt from payment, right? Let me just see it inside, right? Sorry. If someone is warned, if someone is warned, which is worse, and they did it anyway, and they're exempt from paying money, if we didn't warn them, we're obviously also going to exempt him. We're not going to make we're not going to make it worse for him if he wasn't warned. So therefore, Rish Lakish gives a different answer, right? That explains why he didn't hold like Rabbi Yochanan. Rish Lakish's answer was, the Mishnah's Rabbi Meir, very simply, Rabbi Meir holds malkot and payment. There is no din of kimle when it comes to lashes. So to which we then had, we're now going to go with a question. We're going to start at the bottom of Lamed Dalet Amud Bet. Eitivei Rish Lakish to Rabbi Yochanan. Rish Lakish says to Rabbi Yochanan, I have a source that contradicts what you said. V'lo yiyeh ason anoshi hanesh. Again, going back to this case, two men were fighting. They killed a pregnant woman, or maybe they didn't kill the pregnant woman, but she lost the baby. So if lo yiyeh ason, if she's not killed, anoshi hanesh, then there's monetary payment. That seems to imply what? If she dies, then there is no monetary payment, right? So now, my love, ason mamash, it sounds like it's all dependent on did she die or did she not die? It has nothing to do with, was he punished in court for it or not, right? Was he warned or not warned? There's nothing to do with that. It all has to do with did she die or did she not die? It has nothing to do with if he was warned or not warned. So therefore, it sounds like even if he wasn't warned and he doesn't get the death penalty, since there was an ason, and only when there's no tragedy does he have to pay, it sounds like he's actually exempt from paying the money for the fetus, right? Because there's two things. There's her dying and the money for the fetus. So even if he doesn't get the death penalty, it sounds like he doesn't have to pay the money for the baby, the loss of the child. To which Rabbi Yochanan answers, lo din ason. What it means is, no, he wasn't convicted to murder. If he was convicted, then there's no payment. If he wasn't convicted, then he would have to pay. Some people say the exact reverse happened here, which is Rabbi Yochanan. Rish Lakish, Rabbi Yochanan brought this as a source against Rish Lakish and said the following: below yason anesh, my love din ason. Rabbi Yochanan first went ahead and assumed it's talking about if he wasn't judged to death, then he would have to pay the money. But if he was judged to death, he wouldn't have to pay the money, and that seems to prove it's all me, because my opinion was only if he was judged to death, he would be exempt. To which Rish Lakish said, lo, ason mamash. Now you could read it as meaning ason mamash, only if, right? If as long as she died, there's no monetary payment. Again, that's Rish Lakish. Rish Lakish says it doesn't matter whether he was warned or not. It doesn't matter whether he gets the death penalty or not. No matter what, there's an exemption from money because it was a death. It was a capital crime, you could say. So Amar Rav, umi kalamanda amar chayve mitzvot shogegin chayavim. Is there really someone who says, okay, now he's questioning Rabbi Yochanan. Is there really someone who says that someone who's liable for death accidentally, okay, meaning he wasn't warned, has to pay money? Really? Is that true? Didn't they learn in the house of Chizkiah? Makeh Adam u'makeh be'ema. This is based on a verse in Vayikra 24, verse 21. Makeh be'ema yishamena. Someone who hits an animal pays. U'makeh Adam yumat. It's kind of setting up a difference between one who kills animals and one who kills people. If you kill a human, you get the death penalty. If you kill an animal, you pay money. But they juxtapose them in the Pasuk, in the Brighton, the Bechizkiah, the house of Chizkiah, basically wants to compare them in a particular way. It's a bit of a strange drasha, I have to say, because it's comparing them in ways that we're going to say that things come out different, but similar. Okay? There's something similar about it. If you kill an animal, you're going to have to pay no matter what, whether you were intentional or not, because this is all based on Adam U'ad Olam. A person is always, it's a Mishnah in Bava Kama, some people are always responsible for their actions. It doesn't matter whether it was accidental or not. If you injured someone or injured an animal, right, they're someone's possessions, you have to pay for it. So there's no difference, unwitting or intentional. It doesn't matter if you intended to hit that animal or you didn't intend to hit the animal. It doesn't make a difference. This is something that comes from the laws of accidental deaths. Okay, we're not going to get into this right now, but it doesn't matter whether you were throwing, let's say you threw something at the animal and it went going, as you were going down, it hit the animal, or maybe if it went up, it doesn't make a difference. Okay, le patron mamon, as you might try to use those as an excuse to get out of money. No, there's no distinction. You're always going to be obligated. Now, here comes the comparison to Makeh Adam. Af Makeh Adam, likewise, when you hit a person, meaning when you hit a person and kill them, because that's the context of the pasuk, Makeh Adam Yumat, obviously they're talking about death. You killed someone, Lo tachlok bo ben b'shogeg ben b'mezid. We make no distinction between shogeg and mezid, whether it was unwitting or intentional. Ben mitkaven l'she'en mitkaven, whether you intended to kill this person or you didn't intend to kill the person. Ben derech yiridah l'derech aliyah. It doesn't matter whether you killed them on the way down or you killed them on the way up. In what way does it not make a difference? Now, of course, it makes a difference if you were unwitting or witting, or intentional. What do you mean? If it was accidental, you don't get the death penalty. If it was intentional, you do. So what does this mean? Well, l'chayvom mamon. Okay, now either which way, you're never going to be obligated money. Ela lepatron mamon. Whether you're intentional or not, this is the main point. No matter what, you're not going to have to pay money. Because this is a capital crime, and therefore you won't be obligated in any monetary obligation. So how could Rabbi Yochanan go against this explicit braita of the house of Chizkiah? Clearly says what Rish Lakish says. Once it goes into the realm of capital crime, you're exempt from any monetary payment. So, Ela ki'ata Rabin, when Rabin came from Israel, he explained to us, Amal, really, like Chizkiah said, if it's the death penalty and it's a capital crime, you will never pay money. Nope. Even Rabbi Yochanan agrees with that. What was Rabbi Yochanan talking about? What was our case? It was lashes. The machloket that Rish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan are having is specifically when it comes to lashes. When you're obligated lashes, again, when you did a sin that would theoretically obligate you lashes, but you weren't warned about it, that's when they have a machloket. If there was a monetary issue at stake as well, when you did that, you did something else that caused you to have to pay money, would you pay it or not? Rabbi Yochanan Amar Chayav, in the event that you don't have to pay the lashes, you don't have to get the lashes because, or you can't, they don't give you lashes because it was unintentional, that's a case where we're going to say, you're obligated. Now, Rabbi Yochanan says you're obligated to pay because since we're not administering lashes, there's no kimle here. And he says, why does he say this? There's a hekesh in the pasuk Makeh Be'ema, Makeh Adam, where we learned this whole thing, that even if you're shogeg, there's no difference, shogeg mezid, that you're always going to be exempt from payment. That was all talked about in a mavet case, in a death case. But Chayvim Malkiot, there's no hekesh in this pasuk. It wasn't talking about any case where you'd be liable for lashes, and therefore it's not relevant for lashes. Rish Lakish Amar Patur. Rish Lakish says you're exempt. And he's going to say this line that the Gemara is going to have a lot of issues with. The Torah explicitly said that one who's liable for lashes is like one who's liable for death on this issue. So the Gemara says, okay, why don't you, right, where? Where exactly did the Torah say this? So Amar Abaye, Atya Rasha Rasha. He learns it from Gzera Shava. The word Rasha appears in Pasuk Bamidbar Lamed Hey, chapter 35. Don't take payment for someone who murdered. Don't let him pay his way out because he is a bad person who killed somebody. And by lashes, we've already seen this verse a few times recently. Dvarim chapter 25, verse 2. If you hit the Rasha, the Rasha here is someone who's liable for lashes. So there you see, Rasha. Okay, that's a good comparison. Rava's explanation of Rish Lakish, though, is going to be a little more difficult. Rava brings a different verse. Rava Amar, Atya Makeh. Now that sounds like our pasuk, Makeh Be'ema, Makeh Adam. None of those were about lashes. To which the Gemara says, Amarle Rav Papa la Rava. Rav Papa says to Rava, what are you talking about? Hey Makeh. What Makeh are you referring to? The one in the verse that we just quoted, that's talking about murder, right? Makeh Adam here is not someone who hit somebody else and has to get lashes for it. No, it's talking about someone who hits someone to the death, and they're liable to the death penalty because the verse says, Makeh Adam Yumat, you'll get killed for doing that. So that means you must have killed the person. So you can't say that's a place where lashes are compared to hitting, to death. Ela hai makeh, so it must be this one. Makeh nefesh behema yishalmena, nefesh tachat nefesh. Now, the pasuk says, if someone kills an animal, makeh nefesh behema, the soul of an animal, yishalmena, he will pay nefesh tachat nefesh, he'll pay the value of the animal that he caused a loss for. V'samichle, next to that verse where we're talking about hitting an animal, it says, ish ki teimum ba'amito kasher asa ken ya'aseh. So because it connects the makeh of the nefesh behema, and that references the makeh behema in the drasha of Bechizkiah, and the next pasuk is makeh behema yishalmena, ish ki teimum ba'amito, which is hitting another person. Therefore, we're going to learn from there the makeh that Rava meant, that must be his pasuk. Now, there's a bunch of problems with this. Problem number one, halav makeh. Anyway, Rava said makeh. We're juxtaposing makeh, right? We're taking two verses. They both say the word makeh. Second pasuk here doesn't say makeh. It just says someone who inflicts a blemish in somebody else. Okay, and then he's responsible, right? It says kasher asa ken ya'aseh lo. If he did someone else, should be done to him, which really means monetary payment. Anyway, number one, it doesn't say makeh. So the Gemara says, anan haka'a ka'akam halinan. Okay, we're just comparing a hitting to a hitting. In other words, it doesn't have to say the word makeh. What he was saying is, again, these are two different types of drashot. Makeh would be more of a gzeira shava. This is the juxtaposition of these two verses is a hekesh. So, and it's talking about the same topic. So that's what he meant. So we resolved problem number one. Okay, don't worry about that. Problem number two, bigger problem, I think. Wait a minute. That pasuk that what were we trying to say? We want to know that malkiot are like chayve mito. Well, the second pasuk that we use there, right? Ish kite mumba mito is not a case where he even gets lashes. We want to know that when you get lashes, you have to pay, right? You have to pay money, even though, right? Even in a case where you don't get the lashes. I've said that wrong. Even when you don't get the lashes, because you weren't warned, you still don't have to pay money. And that we wanted to learn from the death case. But we're learning it from a pasuk that doesn't have lashes with it at all. It's a case where chovel b'chavero, we already learned, someone who hits somebody else pays and doesn't get lashes. So how could you possibly use that pasuk? Chovel, right? So again, hakikti b'chovel b'chavero dichtiv. The topic of that pasuk was someone who hits someone else. B'chovel b'chavero bar tashluminu. He does pay. He's not exempt from payment and doesn't even get lashes. So, which the Gemara says, if sometimes we have psukim that there's really no purpose for them. We already know psukim that tell you about a chovel b'chavero. So this must be, if it's not really talking about art, right, a regular case, it must be talking about some unique case. What's that unique case? We already learned it. Somebody hit somebody, and it wasn't worth the value of a pruta, the injury. In that case, there's no payment. And in that case, you actually get lashes. So they've now found a case where you get lashes. Perfect. But what's the problem? Wait a minute. We need a case in order to learn when there's lashes and monetary payment. Even if you don't actually get the lashes, you're still not going to have to pay the money, just like in a death case. That's exactly what we've been trying to prove. Right? That's what Rish Lakish's whole approach is. But you need a case where there's lashes and monetary payment. And what did we just say? This is a case where it's less than a pruta, which means less than the value of a coin. There is no payment. So labar tashlumin. We're now on a bet. There's no payment in this case. So what could you possibly be talking about? So lo tzricha, it must be this very unique case. As you were hitting the person, you tore their clothes, and then you incurred a monetary payment. But since the hit was a hit that was the injury was less than a coin, you pay lashes, and we're going to exempt you from the payment of the money. Okay, this is you notice all along the Gemara is having a lot of issues with this explanation of Rish Lakish, question after question after question. Okay, and most of these questions are actually according to Rav's explanation of Rish Lakish. But even before, Rish Lakish made this broad statement, the Torah clearly said this, and the whole question is where, right? Machloket Abai and Rava, where? And then within Rava, we had a lot of questions until we had to finally say this pasuk is talking about a very unique circumstance. Now we're going to have, before we get to the very last part of today's stuff, which is a Braita, connecting back to our Mishnah, but we're going to have 3 questions on 3 sections we talked about previously. So the first is on the Tana de Bechizkia. Amar le Rav Chia le Rava. Each of these cases is someone's going to say to somebody else, I have a question. Uletana de Bechizkia, Adama, Make Adam, Make Behema, Mimai de Bechoktiv, Vileka Leifluge. How do we know that it's talking about someone who hits on a regular day of the week? And then we learn, okay, let's go back to Tana de Bechizkia. His whole explanation was based on that in Makeh Behema, we don't distinguish Shogeg u'Mezid, right? Since there's no distinction, Shogeg u'Mezid, whether you did it intentionally or not, and you're always going to be obligated money. Therefore, in our case, right, if you kill somebody, it doesn't matter, you're always going to be exempt from money, whether it was Shogeg or Mezid and whether you were warned or not, basically. So now, that would have to assume that it happened on a Yom Chol. Why? Because we're going to see in a minute. Dilma b'Shabbat, maybe the pasuk's talking about. Now, it's not talking about only on Shabbat, but it's talking about even on Shabbat, because it says anytime you hit an animal, anytime would include if you hit an animal on Shabbat. Now, what's the difference on Shabbat? Well, to behema gufa, right? Maybe it's on the animal, ika leifluge. If you hit an animal on Shabbat, okay, now there's an assumption. If you hit an animal on Shabbat and you cause blood to come out, the assumption, it would have to be a case where you wanted the blood. That would be a tolada of the malacha of mefarek, where we're taking something out from where it's in, okay? Like separating the wheat from the chaff. You're pulling something out from within. If you needed the blood, if you injured an animal and you needed the blood, then you'd be liable for Shabbat, the death penalty. In that case, you actually wouldn't pay. So now, then what Chizkiah held to be true wouldn't be true. He said, if it's talking about Shabbat, then even on Shabbat, you actually, there would be a case where you wouldn't have to pay money, okay? There would be a case if you did it intentionally on Shabbat, right? You wouldn't have to pay money. And he was saying there's no distinction, shogeg u'mezid, no matter what, you always have to pay money. So Gemara says, lo sakadanta. We don't think this is on Shabbat because dichtiv makeh be'ema yishamenu makeh adam yumat. Now, in order to understand where they're going, you have to understand when 2 things are in the same pasuk, they could say, we assume what's true for one is true for the other. So let's see. Hey, chidami, what's the case? Idilo atrube, if there was a warning, makeh adam yumat. Well, makeh adam yumat must be that the person was warned, because you don't get killed for killing someone unless you were warned before. You've seen that many times. Elapshita da atrube, it must be they warned him. Now, ibis Shabbat, makeh be'ema yishamena, if you were warned, makeh be'ema wouldn't have to pay. So elalav bechol, it must be the pasuk is obviously talking about a case of a weekday, in which case then Chizkiah's halacha stands. Okay, drasha. Next question. Now we're going back to Rabbah. Okay, you have to remember it's a little confusing because we're going back to things we talked about earlier. Rabbah comes up on Daf Lamed Dalet Amud Aleph, and it relates to something from Lamed Gimel Amud Bet at the bottom. Rish Lakish had said that our Mishnah is Rabbi Meir. Then we said, right, because Rabbi Meir holds loket u'mishalem, lashes, right? Even when you get lashes, you also have to pay. And then we said, what about the case of bito then? When there's death penalty, we would assume Rabbi Meir holds you also get lashes. And what does it say further on in the Mishnah? That if somebody rapes their daughter, since you get death by the hands of the court, you're exempt from payment. And if we assume Rabbi Meir holds lokel mishalem, he must say, right, that there's no din of kimle by lashes, he must say there's no din of kimle by death penalty. So and then the Mishnah doesn't work out according to Rabbi Meir, to which they said, well, maybe Rabbi Meir does think that we distinguish, and in the end, that's what we say. Death, yes, there's a din of kimle. Lashes, there isn't. But first, they try to say you can't really say that because they bring this braita of ganav v'tavach. You stole it before Shabbat, then you slaughtered it on Shabbat. Because you're liable Shabbat, you get the death penalty, right? Which would mean that you shouldn't have to pay Arba Avachamisha. But Rabbi Meir says you pay. Why does Rabbi Meir say you pay? So we had two answers. One answer, not relevant right now, which is Tovecha Yedei Achel. Somebody else did the slaughtering. Rabba came and said, no, it's Tovecha Yedei Atzmo, going down to Lamed Dalet and bed at the top. And Rabbi Meir holds Lokel Mishalem, but not Medu Mishalem. Really, the din of Kimle should have applied. But why doesn't it apply? Because it's a knas. Chidush Shechidsha Torah b'knas. That even though there's a law of Kimle, when there's a penalty, a fine, you're going to pay that anyway. So now comes Rav Papa and he says to Abaye, LeRabba. So now we're just dealing with Rabba, this line of Rabba, that Ta'amal, Chidushu Shechidsha Torah b'knas, v'af agav demiktal mishalem, even though you get killed, you pay. Matnitin kimam mukimla. According to who does our Mishnah work then? How does Rabba understand our Mishnah? Okay, we had all these issues with our Mishnah and the contradictions and the options of Ula and Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish. How's Rabba going to read our Mishnah? Now, what's the problem? The problem is this. Ike Rabbi Meir, if he holds like Rabbi Meir, that, right, Loke u'mishalem, right? And what does Rabba say? That mate, you're not mishalem, however, you are mishalem if it's knas. Well, then we're going to have a problem, kasha bito. The case of bito, where a man rapes his daughter, he has to pay, right? He gets the death penalty. And if Rabba said by ganav v'tavach that when there's knas, right? Our case is clearly knas. The Mishnah calls it knas. Chidush Shechidsha Torah b'knas that you're going to pay anyway. Then he should have to pay if he rapes his own daughter, just like in the cases in our Mishnah. So you can't say it's Rabbi Meir. So Ike Rabbi Nechunya ben Akaneh. Maybe he holds like Rabbi Nechunya ben Akaneh. Now, what's that? Rabbi Nechunya ben Akaneh holds that even, we learned this, even when there's karet, there's a law of kimle. Okay? So that would explain, right? We're going to now have a difficulty if you say it's Rabbi Nechunya ben Akaneh. Now, what does he say? What's the problem? You can't say it's Rabbi Nechunya ben Akaneh because kasha achoto. Okay, now, first Rashi says, I want you to understand before we move on with this. Rabbi Nechunya ben Akaneh, Rashi says, Di'itle nami lokel mishalem ke Rabbi Meir. He thinks that lokel mishalem. Now, so what does Rabbi Nechunya ben Akaneh say? If there's karet, there's a din of kimle, which means you wouldn't have to pay when there's karet. So now that doesn't make any sense with our Mishnah, because our Mishnah can't be Rabbi Nechunya ben Akaneh. Why? Because our Mishnah says achoto, there's karet, and you have to pay. And he holds there's kimle b'achoto. So that can't work either. So what can you say? Ika Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak is a good solution. Why Rabbi Yitzchak? We haven't seen him yet. Well, Rabbi Yitzchak doesn't hold by Rabbi Nechunya ben Akaneh. So our Mishnah would work fine. What do we say in our Mishnah? There's karet, right? And there's you're exempt from payment. My mistake. Because there's karet, there's no law of kimle, right? So that's why you'd have to pay. Okay. What's the problem though? The problem, our whole problem with our Mishnah was, but wait, you get lashes. And if you get lashes, then how can you, right? So either you say like Rabbi Meir, loket u'mishalem, that's one option. But what's the problem? So what's a better solution? To say, right? And then if you say that, we had a problem because he says, Chidushu Shechidsha Torah b'knas, you're going to pay the knas anyway. But what's the issue here? In our case, now, when there's Medo Mishalem or Malkot Mishalem, then you're going to have to pay the knas anyway, according to Rabba. But what's the issue? Rabbi Yitzchak says if there's lashes, then you'll have to, right now, our Mishnah, sorry, I just said something, maybe erase the last line I said, but I don't think it's relevant. But anyway, think with me. So Rabbi Yitzchak holds there's a unique law. Until now, we've been assuming the whole question of our Mishnah that we've been struggling with is that if there's lashes, then why are you paying money? Ein adam lokel mishalem. So again, if you say Rabbi Meir lokel mishalem, you're fine, except not according to Rabba, because Rabba said when it's knas, you're going to pay anyway, right? So then we're going to have a problem with the next Mishnah by Bito. But if you're Rabbi Yitzchak holds, I'm sorry, I haven't even gotten to it yet. Rabbi Yitzchak holds when there's karet, there's no lashes. Until now, we've been saying whenever there's karet, there's lashes. And that was Elohen Elokim. Rabbi Yitzchak disagrees with that. He thinks you don't get lashes when there's karet. So he just thinks that this is a classic case of karet. In karet, there's no kimle, and therefore, because he doesn't know like Rabbi Nechunya ben Akaneh, and therefore you pay money. Simple. There's no lashes and there's no question. So theoretically, you could say that he holds by Rabbi Yitzchak. What's the problem? That only helps us with some of the cases in our Mishnah, when there's karet, but not lashes. However, kashya mamzeret. But mamzeret appears in our Mishnah as well. She gets lashes and she has to pay the knas. That doesn't fit at all. Again, that brings us back to, we'd have to say it's Rabbi Meir, but we can't say it's Rabbi Meir because Bito doesn't work, because the next Mishnah, if you say it's Rabbi Meir, again, according to Rabbah, only according to Rabbah, we have this problem. According to Rabbah, Rabbi Meir holds again. Rabbah was trying to explain Rabbi Meir in the Braita of Ganav Tavach, but that has to be applied to here as well, because it's the same Rabbi Meir, which is the knas always you pay. Knas always you pay, then in the next Mishnah with Bito, you're going to have to pay knas. So we can't figure out what he holds. So again, what did I tell you though? This is all if you say that the Mishnah is Rabbi Meir like Rish Lakish held. Well, Hanicha Yisavar like Rabbi Yochanan. Hunami Mitaretz like Rabbi Yochanan. If he held like Rabbi Yochanan, he'd answer like Rabbi Yochanan. What did Rabbi Yochanan say? Our Mishnah is when there's no warning. If there's no warning, then in the Mamzeret case or in any case, you're not going to get lashes, right? And that resolves our Mishnah very simply. So that's how he would have to explain. But Eli Yisavar like Rish Lakish. But if he held like Rish Lakish, that our Mishnah is Rabbi Meir, then he's stuck because of this chidush knas. That would mean all these women are going to get knas, and the next Mishnah says there's some people who don't, like Bito. That wouldn't work. So you'd have no way of explaining our Mishnah. To which the Gemara answers, the only way to understand Rabbah, the way Rabbah explained Rabbi Meir on that Braita, is to say that Rabbah explained Rabbi Meir is saying whenever there's a knas, there's no law of kimle. Overrides kimle, and you'd have to say that he holds like Rabbi Yochanan, otherwise he has no way to explain our Mishnah. Third question, and last one before we get to this last Braita. Amarle Rav Matna l'Abaye l'Rish Lakish ta'amar b'feirush rubta Torah chai v'malkio k'chai v'mitot. Right? What did we say? The Rish Lakish said the Torah specifically said that what? When you have chai v'malkot who are shogegim, right? Meaning there were no warnings, and therefore there's no punishment. You're still going to be exempt from payment, just like chayve mitot. So if that's the case, mantana de palig ale de Rabbi Nechunya ben Akaneh. Who's the one who disagrees with Rabbi Nechunya ben Akaneh and says that, okay, remember, Nechunya ben Akaneh said there is a din of kimle b'karet. Who says that there isn't a law of kimle b'karet? Now, okay, what's the question really? Because according to this, if you assume karet is lashes, how could you say there's no din of kimle by karet? That's basically saying there's no din of kimle by lashes. Because if we say karet means lashes, right? Because whenever there's karet, there's lashes. Other than Rabbi Yitzchak, we'll get back to that in 1 second. Then how are you going to have a din of kimle in lashes? So either we're going to say Rabbi Meir, either you're going to say that he holds like Rabbi Meir, that lokeh u'mishalem, and that's why, because just like karet u'mishalem, lokeh u'mishalem, that works fine. Or Rabbi Yitzchak, you don't assume that whenever there's karet, there's lashes. There isn't lashes when there's karet. And that's why we don't have a problem. The person who holds karet, there's no din of kimle, maybe he holds like Rabbi Yitzchak that there's no law of lashes either. And that would resolve the issue. Okay, next, bright. And with this, we'll finish for today. Arayot, ushniot arayot, enlem lo knas velo pitoy. Arayot, or shniot l'arayot. This obviously goes against our Mishnah. Our Mishnah said in arayot there is knas. This says arayot or shniot l'arayot or arayot to Rabbanan. There's no knas below pito. You don't pay for knas for rape and not for seduction. Hamima enet. We're going to have to understand what this is. We'll have to wait till tomorrow. Hamima enet. One who does miyun. This is a woman who was betrothed by her brother or mother because her father wasn't in the picture. That betrothal is only rabbinic. That means that she's allowed to refuse the marriage if she wants until a certain age, okay, around the age of 12 or 12 and 6 months. She doesn't have knas and not pitoy. She can just leave that marriage. She doesn't need a divorce. She could just say, I don't want to be married to him. So she's sort of married. She's married, but not fully married, but she's already considered not a virgin anymore because she is in this marriage. So therefore, she doesn't get knas or pitoy because she's not a virgin. or consider not a virgin. Even if she was, she's already kind of a married woman. Ailonit, a woman who never reaches age of maturity. Okay, she reaches that age, but she has no signs of physical maturity. In order to have knas, what did we learn? You have to be a na'ara. She never has a stage called na'arut, because that's a stage where after you have 2 simanim, she never has 2 simanim, right? For that 6-month period. So an ailoni, ela lo knas velo pitui. And hayotzeit mishum shemra, a woman who gets married and her husband claims she's not a virgin after the first night, ela lo knas velo pitui. She's presumed not a virgin, so she doesn't get knas for pitui. So the Gemara is going to ask, my arayot or my shniot la arayot, and that's going to be our question we're going to deal with tomorrow. With that, we'll finish today's daf. Have a great day, everyone.